So, next ed code is the reason why when you're doing things with student body, the governing board is required to provide oversight of what's going on. So that's why you have an advisor, that's why you have the business office of the college still working with the money, giving advice, telling you where you have to account for certain things. This is the ed code that requires that. So this is the ed code that talks about political organizations, what can and can't happen, what can happen on your campus, what can be distributed. This is kind of the beginning of that whole political part of it. And then your own district policies kind of go from there on what is and isn't allowed on your college. So I don't know if you have any auxiliary organizations in, you do. So this is the ed code that starts with the whole idea of auxiliary organizations that are different than you are, right? Because they're a separate legal entity. And so kind of gives the guidelines, allows them to be formed, starts giving the guidelines on what needs to happen. And we'll cover those a little bit later. So they are separate legal entities, and that's really important to remember because you are part of the college. An auxiliary organization is separate. It's actually a separate legal entity. So sometimes people don't realize it. Their money is their money. Your money is actually part of the college. So there's really a difference, and we will talk about that later. But this is the ed code that kind of starts all that out. More information on auxiliary organizations. Again, this is really for your reference. If you really got bored and wanted to read these entire ed codes, if you go to the FCMAT manual, FCMAT.org, you can see the whole ed code at the back of the manual. It's good sleeping material. Okay, so those are the laws. And I like to always start with that just so you know what is in the ed code. Now we're going to talk about more of the specifics. And as we go through this, if you have any questions, please do ask, okay? Because this is really to make sure this helps you understand what it is that will help you do your jobs better, okay? So first we have the law. Now let's kind of go into more detail. As you're going to see, we talked about the law. Not everything we're going to talk about now is specifically in the law. A lot of this is good business practice, what works, what are good parameters, how to do it well. So sometimes we have to kind of go between what's law and what's best. So these are best practices that FCMAT would recommend to any organization. It's what works. And so through the years, I've been doing this for 13 years, you just get to a point of this is what works really well. And so if I ever say anything contrary to your constitution or your own board policies, they actually override me because your policy, your constitution is as good as law. So my best practices sometimes might be harder than what you do, have more rules to it. And if it does, you might want to think about changing what you're doing to have more rules, because in this area of student body, the reason we've gotten so strict is because there's a lot of fraud that happens in the area of student body, a lot of things that go wrong, and we all assume it's not going to happen to us, right? Nothing's going to happen that's bad to us. But in my 13 years with FCMAT, I do a lot of fraud audits, but I will tell you, if fraud is going to happen, if people are going to steal or people are going to take advantage of you, this is one of those areas where people are going to do it. And when fraud happens, it doesn't usually happen because somebody's a mastermind and comes up with this great idea of how to do something. It usually starts because we make it really easy for them. So imagine a fundraiser where, you guys aren't doing it as much as might happen in a high school, but let's talk about a pasta feed or something, right? People are coming to a pasta feed, and everybody who comes to the front door hands over money, and then they go in and they eat. Well, if tickets aren't being handed out at the pasta feed or plates aren't being counted, or the money's just put into a box, can you imagine how many people start putting $20 bills in their pocket? And you start thinking about that. So if somebody's really in a desperate place and they start taking a 20 here, a 20 there because they don't think they're going to get caught, and the next day, they realize they didn't get caught, well, they're going to start working more fundraisers. They're going to start pocketing more money because they're not helping you guys learn how to steal, huh? So it happens all the time. And so every time I would work my kids' fundraisers, I would start thinking like that because I know way too much and I know what can happen, and it happens every single day. But see, fraud often happens that way. We make it really easy, somebody's desperate, they do it, they don't get caught, they do it again, and they do it again. But fraud is much more than that. It's everything from not doing bank reconciliations, it's not filling out forms, it's not doing receipts. It all brings us to the same place. So a lot of this stuff we're going to talk about, I just want you to remember fraud can happen, and it does happen. And so kind of keep that in mind, that it's a lot of rules and a lot of stuff that we're talking about, but it is for a really good reason, okay? Okay, so with student body, it's really important to remember that all of you, the students, are the primary authority of what happens in student body. That's really, really important with the other parameters that we have to follow law and board policy and all that. But you are the primary authority. So when I talked about the ed code earlier that says that everything has to be pre-approved by 3 people, one is a student, right, and 2 of them were employees of the college, but you should be the primary authority. The other 2 adults that are there to also pre-approve really are there to make sure you are following the law, board policy, all the rest of it, that it works. But I want you to remember you are the primary